Hey, before this episode starts, I just want to thank Jordan for coming on. He had some takes and opinions I don't think have ever really been discussed on the show yet, so it was really fun for me to have somebody bounce opinions off of and actually have this discussion with. That being said, the first half of this episode, we do touch on what some might consider controversial. And as long as it's not motivated by anger, I think I can speak on mine and Jordan's behalf that we do encourage the conversation. And if you have an opinion on whatever we discussed, I do encourage you to leave your take in the comments. Or you can DM me on Instagram at Passtime Thinker or Jordan at JPowerComedy. As always, shout out to our patron Kevin. And if you want to become a patron as well, you can go to patreon.com/pastime. And as always, make sure to like and share and show the show to anyone you think might enjoy it. Thanks, and enjoy the episode. Hello, and welcome to episode 25 of the Passtime Thinker podcast. I'm your host, Frederick Piquette, and today my guest is Jordan Power. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you, man?
Good. So, right off the bat, one thing I wanted to ask, poke fun at a little bit is, yeah, you're an author.
Yes, I am.
Name of the book is Famous Anus.
Can you believe that no one else thought of that before me?
I mean, it rhymes, but the first question that came to mind, like just kind of perusing the book, whose anus is it about?
Mine.
Okay.
It's a memoir.
Okay, it's a memoir.
I mean, I wouldn't say the whole book's about my anus, so maybe the anus is like the protagonist or something.
It's
but
the
I mean,
protagonist.
it's like about me being slutty in my 20s, and
As you
then
do.
yeah, I mean, I was kind of just I actually had an original book deal that I turned down from a publisher. Actually, self-published my book instead. For a lot of reasons, not only the royalty payouts are superior, but also the fact that creatively they just completely constrain you.
I was about to say, what was the pro con chart looking
Oh,
like?
they completely constrain you. Your royalty payout is $1.25 into perpetuity for the rest of your life, versus if you
Jesus.
self-publish, it's $7.
That's a lion's share. Like,
yeah, but well, they give you an advance. So the idea is that most
Oh.
authors actually don't even earn back their advance. 9 out of 10 books don't make money. So you get the Jordan Petersons and like the books that sell 2 million copies that kind of support the whole thing. But I was also ascending in notoriety. And so I was like, yeah, 2 years from now, I could get a bigger advance. And also like, dude, the way that they wanted to constrain me was so comical. It wouldn't have even been a funny book.
Really? Like they actually had like, you can't say this. You can't say this. You can't put that there.
They were like, they were like, any ideas for the cover? And I said, I want to call it Famous Anus. And I said, I want the cover to be an anus coming out of a tux, doing the Angelina Jolie leg, like she's famous for.
Yeah.
And just, kind of comical vibe. I mean, it's a ridiculous book. And they were like, yeah, we could never sell a book called that. And they said to me, we could never get a book like that in bookstores. And then I had looked it up about a week before, and I now learned that over 85% of all books are purchased online, ebook or paperback through Amazon. So bookstores these people are dinosaurs.
Well, that too. And I find that's a little bit of a stretch because like you can buy Cards Against Humanity at almost any bookstore. And
right.
Like some of the shit in that game is pretty off color.
Yeah, but dude, I also just, when you're a gay person, you always just feel like an aberrant, and then there's always, you immediately get your backup, right? And you think like, is there undertones of homophobia here?
Yeah.
Even when there isn't, right? And so I don't know, but I kind of have always been an entrepreneur and made my own way, and I know this business. That's when I went down the self-publishing route, and I don't care about the ego play. It's far superior in every way.
Yeah, I mean, I know a few people who have self-published and didn't really work out in their favor, and I know a few people who have, and it did.
Right. Well, you gotta have a fan base to start with, right? And I already had a following at that point, so I was like, I don't really need you guys.
Yeah, because like, I wonder if like there must be people who make that play. Like, I'm gonna write a book, self-publish, and this is gonna be how I grow my audience. But that's probably not feasible.
I think you've got to do the reverse of that, right? You got to go in. I mean, they originally approached me because I had a hit podcast called Shame on You, and they were at one of the major publishers, and the thing was doing 20,000 downloads a week, and actually probably 25. But anyway, not to brag, but but I'll brag. And so yeah, they kind of came to me, and then they actually, it's very interesting. These people always want to do what works, right? So they actually wanted me to write a book called How I Conquered My Gay Shame and You Can Too. like a Oprah-esque
W-
ridiculous book. And
But
I'm a filthy comedian, so for me, I just started laughing.
but like they just wanted to change the title. Like none of the actual contents of the book changed, and they wanted to name it that.
No, they wanted an entirely different book delivered to them. I
Oh,
mean,
they
I
wanted this. I got bullied in high school, but I got over it. Now I'm proud and
right,
gay. Like come up
right.
story.
Right. It's inspirational, something they can package. And I'm sure, listen, books like that do sell well. I mean, people buy garbage all the time. I mean, I'll call it people watch The Masked Singer for fuck's sake. So like I hope I can
I
curse
have
on.
not. I haven't jumped on that ship yet. I keep hearing about it. It's like it's spiraling around me. Like every day, like another person in my life is like, "Have you seen The Masked Singer?"
Dude, I saw on CNN the other day, CNN, the most trusted name in news is what they call themselves. They had a front page of their website. I kid you not, who is the identity of broccoli, which is the character that like the D-list celebrity is dancing inside, like the
Yeah.
costume. And I almost put a gun in my mouth because I was like, "This is CNN. This is
Well,
CNN now."
like no, fuck. Like CNN's in a very difficult position right now. I think. Well, not a difficult position they put themselves in, because Trump isn't around anymore to
Right.
have 24/7 coverage on, and an airplane hasn't crashed recently, so they're kind of like, whatever. Put whatever up there. They'll read it.
But don't you think? I think largely people are with podcasts, Reddit, things like that. I think a lot of people are waking up to how partisan these media institutions are, like not
Oh
just CNN,
yeah.
but like Fox News. So it's like it becomes a propaganda outlet. Like CNN's never been against a war. They're shilling for big pharma, military industrial complex. And I think people realize that either they're getting one narrative or they're being lied to, or also it's just become theater. I mean, it's like every
Oh, kind of.
overly dramatic thing. I just find it not real and so fabricated.
I mean, yeah, like that's definitely something that probably like a year, maybe a year and a half into Trump's presidency, like I started realizing that, like kind of before when, because like I'll admit, because when Trump first started, I was a little empathetic. I'm like, well, let's see what he's gonna do first. Like, we don't know. Like he won, so like let's see where this
He's
goes.
a game show host, yeah.
And then yeah, and then after a while, I was like, wow, CNN is just connecting some high level dots here. I think either that or like they just don't exist.
Well, you know what it is. I mean, I'm not one of those people though that will say that everything Trump did was bad, or every idea that Trump had was bad. I think then you'd have to be really in the echo chamber at that point to just think it. I mean, he's a odious human being who has racial.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
it's just those things are obvious about him, but I mean, he wasn't a warmonger like Obama. And I mean, that's something that people won't forget. It's 38 days into Biden's presidency, and he's already bombing
And
Syria.
and there's bombs coming down.
Yeah, and I looked, and he was filling his cabinet with Raytheon board members, which is the biggest of the military-industrial complex, and I knew he was filling up those people, and I went, "Oh, this will be business as usual." And 38 days in, dropping bombs without congressional approval.
Yeah,
So
that I mean, I'll admit I kind of like as soon as like Biden got into presidency, I kind of fell asleep on it. Like those bombs is like the first thing I've heard of Biden doing anything. So I'm like, "Oh, okay. Maybe I should pay attention a little bit more." I thought we were okay.
yeah, well, you know what the biggest thing I try to do with my podcast, not shame on you. I have a podcast now called Unmentionable, and
Mhm.
we do mostly comedy, but I do a lot of politics, and I try to take people through the three stages of being a politically conscious person. So I think when you're in the beginning of the stages, you're usually young. You say, okay, I'm a liberal. My parents are a liberal.
Yeah.
You take in a little bit of information, whatever. Then you get to the second stage where you are clearly defined in your tribalism, and you really only take in information that confirms your beliefs and your narratives, and you live in the echo chamber, and you listen to Rachel Maddow because she doesn't challenge you and she makes you feel special, but then she lies to you about Russiagate and all that bullshit for a year that went nowhere. And then you get to this third stage that I try to get to with my audience, where I realize that we actually have so much more in common with our neighbors, and you have to really look at politics as a top-down approach, as in
Yeah.
they're all scum at the top and it's elite versus underclass. And once you get to that point, it's so much of it makes more sense than trying to do this left and right nonsense all the time.
Exactly, because like you're up against the elite on both sides of the aisle. They're not, I wouldn't say the enemy, but they are the opposition in a lot of ways. Um, uh, my political journey was a little bit different than that. It was basically I was on one side of the pendulum. I took a hard swing to the other side of the pendulum, and then I like fell somewhere in the middle where I am now.
So
But
wait, hold on. Did you swing left to right or right to left?
I swung left to right very
Okay.
hard for like the better part of a year.
Was it because
And
you were disillusioned with the left?
a little bit, yeah. Like this, just to name a few people, like I suddenly discovered Milo Yiannopoulos, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, Jordan Peterson, like all at once. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, these guys kind of mix. And then like after like making them my identity for a few months, I was like, I eventually started seeing, other takes on the same opinions, and I started like kind of backing away from them. Like, oh shit, I shouldn't have. I probably shouldn't have talked about these guys as much as I did.
Yeah, but they're not. Listen, they're not always wrong. This idea that
Yeah.
like, oh, I mean, Jordan Peterson, whether you if you don't agree with him or not, he's the most famous psychologist in the world, arguably. I mean, so it's like these people who are always pretend. I mean, I don't know why everyone needs to say if they're left or right. I mean, you can take all these tests and stuff like that, but
Oh yeah.
someone asks me this stuff. I'm like, I am hard left. I think on drugs. I think all drugs should be legal. I think sex work should be decriminalized. I'm hard left on the environment,
Hmm.
but I also could own a gun.
Yeah.
And it's like people can't understand how you can be different things. I'm like, no, you're just the sum of your life experiences and the information you took in, and that's where you'll sit. But everyone needs to play that tribalism game all the time and be like, I'm on the right team, I've got the right information.
Yeah.
You're an idiot, I'm smart, and it's so arrogant.
Well, and another issue with that I find is like, we're as like citizens, like we're kind of forced into that tribalism because the only way you can make any real change is by identifying with one of those groups and then using that group to push an agenda that hopefully you agree to like 80% with.
Right. That will always in the agenda will always go back to the center, meaning Biden's a corporatist centrist. I don't know why the far left ever thought they were going to get anything they want. Like it to me it's comical. I mean, but you're right. I mean, it is how you get things done, but nowadays it's how people earn it. People without an identity get an identity.
Oh yeah.
It's harsh to say, but it's people will become all about their politics when they're really not that interesting or well informed.
And like that was definitely a rabbit hole I fell under. Like I love just the concept of arguing. I love arguing. Like it's a bad habit of mine, but I just love playful argument. Like I'll debate almost anything with anyone just for the sake of it. So when I was like super far in the left side with a lot of agreeable people, we all had the same opinion, and then I discovered all these ideas. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna push these ideas, and then see what happens. And that's kind of how I found the middle ground,
Right.
was by taking complete opposite take and then have people kind of talk me down from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, man? I think also that it sounds like you were malleable in a way, right? So that's a sign of someone who's not a pseudo intellectual. Like you're a malleable person. You can change with time. You're willing to learn. But a lot of people just get in the chamber and they shut the door and they will never look out the door. And also, I
Yeah.
honestly think when you get hardcore in the tribalism, like where we're at now, with your algorithm serving you what you want to believe, I do think you get to the point where you don't see the humanity in people, meaning if you're an American, 74 million people voting for Trump, they're not all monsters. They're not
No.
all racist. And you immediately say that about people and you don't look at your neighbor as a person.
And like I find that, like, I'm just gonna like address, I guess, an elephant in the room. Like it's interesting that you say that, as a gay man,
Mhm.
because like there's a lot of people that I'm friends with who were just blanket statement, if you support Trump to any capacity, like you're not like an ally.
Right.
And that's something that I had to like, like, not my world, I don't have an opinion on it, I'll just take your word for it. Like, okay, if this is how you feel. And like it's interesting to hear you kind of not like fully, but like kind of debunk it a little bit.
Well, I think a lot of people don't. A lot of people, it's a very reductive approach to politics, right? So a lot of people look at Trump and they say that he has non-negotiables. So he says things or he believes things that they could never possibly be on board with. One of the things is that Trump is a racist. I think Trump is a racist personally. I think definitely. I think there's parts of that are undeniable.
Oh yeah.
But the talking points on the left has always been it's up to minorities to decide if something's racist. Meaning, like, I have friends that are straight guys and they make gay jokes about me dying of AIDS, and I think they're funny. And I don't get offended and I don't consider that homophobia. But what's interesting is why the left really doesn't get Trump is because he gained with every single minority group in the last election, 10 points with LGBT. And so if he is this racist person that every single person claims, it's usually white people on the coast, then why does he resonate with and increase with all those minorities if it's their choice what is racist?
Yeah, except instead of just going with, this is the definition of racism, is this what it is? Instead of, well, like, what do you think? What do you think?
Exactly. And it's like, why is I'm a white person? I don't know if it's really my I don't think I should step in and tell a black person, oh no, that is racist. I know you don't realize that as a black person, that's racist to black people. It's like it's
Yeah.
kind of their
Like
place to determine.
like I always get uncomfortable when it comes to representations of communities I'm not a part of. I'm very afraid of white knighting, but I'm still like really interested in like the knowledge and information. So like I be very, when it comes to things like that, like I try to be as inquisitive as possible without like actually inserting my opinion. Just
Yeah.
because I feel like, I don't know, I just get like this like, not my business, not my community. Like
Well,
I
and there's a humility in being deferential is really what you're saying. I mean, because it's like, you're turning to the person who is the minority and saying, how do you feel about that? Do you feel that's racist? Is that racist to you? You're listening to them instead of being the white person being like, oh, he's racist for sure.
like sit down, I'll take care of you, don't worry.
Yes, it is very condescending. I remember I saw Chelsea Handler was, she's like an activist now, which is hilarious. And she was tweeting at 50 Cent because he was going to vote for Trump. And she actually said, you're a black person. You can't believe you can't vote for Trump. And it's like, to me, that was like, shit, that's some racist shit right there.
And like a lot of it has to be, white knighting. Like I feel like people would do that, you know, for the herd mentality of, the black community on the left, because they see 50 Cent as a minority within their group. So she would rather side with the majority of them than the minority of colored people voting for Trump.
Right.
Because I think, at least in her eyes, that's a net win.
Mm-hmm. And it's also people don't understand what Trump represents to the people that voted for him, besides the white supremacists, besides the people that were always going to vote Republican.
Yeah, like they're like, again, like you have to agree to, if you agree to one, you agree to both. Like, yeah, there's people who voted for Trump for, nuanced reasons that they stood for. Then there are people that just saw him as a racist and went like, yeah, I want him, and people who saw him as a homophobe and went, yeah, I want him because I'm also that.
But I think what he also represents to the people that didn't see him for that reason, he's a con man, don't get me wrong,
yeah.
but represented anti-establishment. And I think it's really indicative of how disillusioned everyone is with politics and leaders right now. Or I just think in the future too, is that he came in as presenting as a change maker to people, and they said, yeah, he's gross, yeah, he grabs women by the pussy, blah 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 stuff, but to me he represents a wrecking ball in the system, and I'm going to roll the dice and see what this guy will do, because Hillary Clinton is stale and
Yeah.
representative of rot.
Like I remember my overall opinion going into that election was it's a lose-lose. Like I wasn't entirely invested because I'm like, I always just saw it as a lose-lose. Like, yeah, there's probably going to be a little bit less controversy with her, and there's probably going to be a lot more with him, but like in the end, like bad shit's probably going to happen.
Yeah. Well, because the elites are going to do what they're going to do. And I always say that to people, and they hate when I say that because it's a loss of control. But I pretty much say what you're witnessing right now is pretty much theater in front of you.
Yeah.
But people love it. They dance in the streets and you know what? I don't want to take away too much of people's hope in a way, because of course they want a better life and they want to believe that these people are going to help them. But I think so much of what you need to change in your life usually comes from you. And that it's a sick, sick world. And I think there are going to be people that are just going to continue to raid countries and bomb them and pillage them. And, that's the American way.
That's why they don't have free healthcare. They gotta bomb shit.
Exactly. I mean, Raytheon is a publicly traded company. So every time that we bomb these places, I say we, but they bomb these places, and stockholders or shareholders make money. I mean, it's a sick system.
Damn, no one's talking about that on Wall Street Bets.
No, they aren't. I'm sure if it was a good return, they would. I mean, it's a market, right? But I mean, also the prison system, percentage of the prison system, I think it's 15% of the American prison system is for profit. So you're talking about publicly traded companies.
Because it's isn't it privatized, like the prison system?
A percentage, only 15%. I think. But still, that means you have an incentive to throw young black men in jail. So that's how they came up with mass incarceration, because they turned it into a business.
No, it definitely helped with motive. Like there shouldn't be like a motivation behind incarceration. Like it's supposed to be a punishment if you do something wrong. It's supposed to be, a form of rehabilitation if you need help. But like the fact that there's like an actual financial motivation behind getting people in these prisons, I think is a huge flaw.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, that's America. Everything's a business. They will make every little thing, they will colonize. I mean, it's a country based on, founded on genocide and slavery. I
Oh,
mean,
I mean,
that's how they got there.
pretty much most of the Western world is.
Yes. But I mean, it's a country that just, I mean, they just do what they want, anything to make money. I mean, the Iraq War was about oil. Everyone knows that. And
Oh
then
yeah.
and my friends that criticize and say George Bush is a war criminal, which he is, I also say, aren't we all complicit? We all consume oil.
Yeah. I mean, people will boycott everything that represents what they dislike, but you still drive your car. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, we are red pilled. We really red pilled your audience. That was
yeah,
quick.
Jesus Christ, 20 minutes in.
Let's talk about something beautiful.
Oh, GameStop, man, it just keeps going up.
So I was in GameStop. I got in, got out. I wasn't doing the whole diamond hand
Oh,
stuff.
you paper hand.
I paper handed, but I mean also it's like, also who wants to just sit around and be the bag holder?
I mean, that's fair. Like when it was like it dropped down to like $40 and that was scary. That was
Yeah.
that was frightening. I mean, it's back up now.
Yeah, I have, you know what? I have like my main investment stuff with my investment advisor, and then I've got a little bit of cash that I play with for this stuff. But you know what, man? The reason I don't do like day trading or get too invested is just it's so time consuming.
It is.
If you
It
really
is.
get to it.
Like I think like well, actually actually joking implied because I don't want anyone to take this seriously because I'm not ready to admit it. But like it's gambling.
It's all gambling.
Oh,
Yeah.
it feels like a gambling addiction sometimes.
Of course it is. It's the same dopamine receptor. I mean, it's the same receptor you're eroding with your phone. Dude, I didn't have Instagram for 3 years. My life was so much better. I can't even tell you. I don't have Facebook anymore. I'm trying to get rid of my Twitter. I got rid of WhatsApp just because I don't want Zuck looking at my data any more than I need to. And I got Brave browser. I use DuckDuckGo. Like I'm unplugging slowly, and life is getting a lot better.
I've never had a Twitter account. My Facebook at this point is just memes. Like I just scroll it to find and share memes, and I'm
Or
so
your mom's friends with QAnon. That's what mine became. It just became boomers and QAnon, the whole thing.
well. That's an interesting thing, like specifically about my Facebook feed because of the weird transition I made with my political views.
Hmm.
I have very very strong activists on both sides of the aisle on my Facebook feed, and sometimes they discover that I'm their friend in common, and it's a conversation. like Fred, why? Like
Everyone's
why?
so invested. I've never been one of those people that really. I mean, I was like kind of dating this Republican guy. I mean, he's ridiculous. But dude, I didn't take any of that seriously because I see the political system as more top down. I mean, abortion's not, they're not going to overturn that. I mean, I think gay rights is pretty good, but I mean, the bigger problems is the rot of the system. The system itself is completely designed to, I mean, capitalism in the world we live in is a giant Ponzi scheme. We just, especially with the environment, we just borrow things and kick the can down the road. So it's like electric cars are going to save us. Well, no, there's a finite supply of minerals and lithium in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, again, not to red pill down your audience, but it's like these are the things where I just kind of say, I'm like, it's all just a system that like is so delicate, and that's why you saw a virus just completely collapsed it.
Yeah, and like, I mean, you're not the first person I've heard say this, and like in terms of like a resolution for it, I can't even begin to fathom what it would be. But like, all I know is that the time and effort it'll take to figure out a better system, that's going to be difficult, and then the transition from our current system to that system is going to be absolute chaos.
Well, and also CO2 and methane lag. That's actually the main thing that doesn't get talked. By the way, if you don't want me to red pill your audience, just cut me off because
Oh
I will
no,
go.
it's
I just
fine.
find I find this stuff fascinating. I don't really get too emotionally invested in it, but yeah, the key that we need to solve climate change, it's very simple. It's just to decollapse. we cannot continue. I mean, our entire planet is basically infinite growth with finite resources. So we all know that there's not an infinite supply of oil in the ground, but the entire world runs on oil. So we knew at some point that would fail.
Oh yeah.
Now, the only way to drop you need to start to collapse society so consumption goes down. But if you do that and you stop making energy, then you get economic collapse, and then you also have to turn to people and say you can't fly anymore.
I mean
So
you didn't quite say it, but like that reminds me of a huge like QAnon like theory hole that I fell through
okay, what's the theory?
in terms of like there's people out there. I'll say like there's people out there
That's a good way of putting it. Yes.
who believe that what you just said is completely correct, and that the liberal agenda at the moment is that the solution for that is population control,
Okay.
and that population control is the one and only motivation that why liberals are pro-gay marriage, pro-trans people, pro-abortion, because they think that the liberals see that as a form of population control, and that is their only motivation, and that's why they're so against the liberal agenda, because they're not going to treat us like animals and control the population and blah blah blah. And it was
Wow.
it was a very interesting read. I did not
This
mean I
what
may
the
have
thing
spent
about
2 hours reading into it.
yeah, well, this is the thing I like. I can be conspiratorial at times because this is what I realized from digging for so often was that like there's this whole thing now that like conspiracy theorists, you hear it all over the mainstream media. And listen, the vast majority of conspiracy theories are stupid. QAnon, Pizzagate, it's stupid,
Yeah.
stupid stuff. But hidden in that is a lot of things that used to be considered conspiracy theories that are now factually indisputable. Things like the MK Ultra program, things like the CIA selling drugs. Stuff Epstein was once considered a conspiracy theory that Alex Jones broke. So there were things that back then were crazy and could never be true. And then now they're coming out and they're like things you can just read a book about or see them in the New York Times.
Yeah, but that because of that, people use that as a motivation to just literally throw anything at the wall to wait for something to stick.
Correct.
And I think it's kind of started this thing that I don't quite agree with. Like conspiracy theorists, I think it's completely healthy. You should question things, but conspiracy believers, I think, are dangerous people.
Sure, but at what point does it you become a believer? I mean, because it's like if you didn't believe that the CIA could drug civilians with acid, you would be a crazy conspiracy theory person. And then the MK Ultra program is indisputable at this point. So then it's like, when are you a believer?
I think time dictates that because,
Right.
like, we'll use MK Ultra for an example. I don't believe in the theory of MK Ultra. I know it was fact. There's no belief there. I know
Correct.
that was real because it's come out. People have revealed it. Right. It was
Mhm.
from the theorizing that made it so that it came out and that people realized it was a thing. But you don't just believe things that essentially, at least at that point, like aren't real. You know what I mean?
Or and that are so mind boggling. Like if someone told you that there was an island where some of the world's richest and most powerful people went and fucked children, you'd say no, there isn't, and then it was true. So you
Yeah.
see how people's minds get melted, and then they fall into QAnon because if you just start there, then wow, you can really go.
Oh yeah.
Shout out to QAnon.
Yeah.
Shout out to QAnon. You know what, man? There is lots of money in that stuff. I mean, look at Alex Jones. Like there's a lot of money. I bet you if you did a QAnon podcast, you'd be rolling in it.
Like I only know Alex Jones for like his meme worth. Like I'm probably familiar with like every Alex Jones meme. I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever actually like sat down and like listened to the guy talk, except for like maybe the once or twice he was on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Well, this is the thing about Alex Jones. He's nuts, but he's also right a scary amount of time. And he was the person that was talking about Epstein before anyone, and then it became this thing that the world now knows.
Mm-hmm.
So this, I mean, he fucked up with Sandy Hook. I think that's the main thing people when he faked the Sandy Hook thing, and there's a couple other ones, but it's scary how many other things he's been right about. So that's why I think Rogan kind of has him on his show, and they roll the dice, and they kind of stay there with Jamie and fact checking him because
Yeah.
he is onto things. And you know what? Listen, it's been well documented the CIA will muddy the waters, so they will promote a lot of garbage so that people will say, oh my God, conspiracy theories, you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. They use that as a tactic. It's been documented. So there is a question, could they be behind something like QAnon? If you look at the Operation Mockingbird was the program they ran where they basically tried to infiltrate the media.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think Rachel Maddow is basically CIA propaganda at this point. I mean, that Russiagate story was such nonsense. Even people on the far left were like, no, Trump's not a Russian asset. Like, come on. And that was the basis for their impeachment. And it went on for a year. It went nowhere.
Yeah, wasted a lot of resources.
But dude, there's people that watch Rachel Maddow every night and they just thought that, I still know people that think that Trump is a Russian asset. And I'm like, you know what? You're giving credence to the right now because they can be like, look at the left. They're crazy.
Yeah. Like, I think then to like rephrase then my opinion is that I think it's okay to be a conspiracy theorist. Like, keep asking questions. Like, that's fine. I think it's just when you conduct yourself, like what you're theorizing is fact, is where the danger comes from. Particularly for the times that you're absolutely wrong.
Right. I think the problem is that the facts are so hidden that it takes, you're right. It's kind of a time thing. I mean, you hear about things and you go, oh, this will be a documentary in 20 years. Like, right. And there's a lot of things now that are kicking around probably, but I think as someone like me, I've really dug into dark stuff, CIA stuff, not like crazy stuff, but just basically how the government works, the lobbying structure, the military industrial complex and stuff like that. Get coarsened because you realize how much it's all kind of fake, like how the not just the theater of politics, but how it really works. And you're like, Joe Biden's just a puppet.
Oh yeah, and then you get to the whole like, is the Illuminati real? Like,
yeah.
is there a secret board of like old rich white people that
have the World Economic Forum, which is that, where they go and a bunch of billionaires hang out and they talk about how they want to run the world. I mean, that's not like a hidden thing, and they publicize it and press goes and stuff like that. But I think there is an argument for some sort of like intellectual collusion, like you're suggesting, in the sense of like we have shared interests, so let's combine our resources.
I definitely believe that that's a thing. Like that, like maybe not to like the scary like cult like way that like media may portray these groups, but there's probably like there's a group chat somewhere.
Oh yeah, it's like how they all, when they deplatformed Milo, it was like they all did it at once. Like, these are different companies.
Yeah.
It's odd.
For sure. Like, it's just how far do you delve into this until, like there's probably a level, like with enough deep diving where, you get to the point where, this isn't a theory, this is true. But a lot of these people get so obsessed that they kind of dig past that point.
Yeah, they take kernels of things that are undeniably true, like people fucking children on an island, and then they take it to the extent of their also draining their blood and drinking it, and it's called adrenochrome.
Yeah, and then how are you supposed to sell that to me? How are you supposed to sell? Like, how are you going to get me to believe you? You could have stopped right there, and it would have been plausible.
But don't you think how hard it was for Alex Jones to sell Jeffrey Epstein to people at the time? Like, that's so crazy. Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, we're talking about like global people, they're on that island. And if you told someone that, you'd be like, I mean, and also this is the thing that always gets lost in the media and the Netflix documentary. It was a giant a blackmail operation. There were cameras in all the houses. It's a way of having leverage over people.
Yeah.
And that's like never talked about. It's talked about as like, yes, it was a human trafficking ring and these people were animals, but they weren't also talking about that the whole government and different senators and people were compromised because he had the ultimate thing on them, was that they're a pedophile and he has a camera of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, at that point, you can see how these people's minds melt, because it's like processing that Bill Clinton was there and there's a tape of him is just your brain just goes, I can't even conceptualize this.
For sure. And again, like I probably should have done more research on Bill, to be completely honest.
Yes.
He's just, I was 100% expecting like, yeah, he's going to beat Trump. And then, it's going to be a quiet 4 years. Like that's been my mindset this whole time. I haven't been following any controversy with him. I haven't been following,
you said Bill. I think you mean Biden.
God, Biden.
Yeah, because I thought you meant Clinton. I'm like, oh, he's got a lot of problems too. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, does Biden even know he bombed Syria? That's what I want to know. I mean, the gaffes, dude. Like, here's the thing: is this is how tribalism does rot your cortex? Because it's like the gaffes that Biden had during the campaign were so insane and they were just swept under the rug because people were like, I want him to win. I mean, first he thought his sister was his wife. Then he said he was running for Senate.
Didn't he fall asleep in the middle of an interview as well?
Yeah, and he also said to the he's at the military and they weren't clapping. He goes, "Clap, you stupid bastards." I mean, dude, it's like, and that's the most powerful person in the world.
I like to think sometimes it just gives me a chuckle that just Biden in the White House, like every now and then he'll hear people say like, "Hello, Mr. President," and like he looks over his shoulder for Barack. Like,
Yeah,
because he went 8 years like that.
Who? He's probably just like, who? The whole time. And listen, and that's the thing is like my mom won't. I talked to her about this, and she hates Trump. And listen, man, I'm pretty apathetic at this point, but I just sort of said to her, I'm like, you have to realize how tribalism makes you go crazy, because if all these people, it's like Hunter Biden is a scumbag, and then you say that, and people, because they want their person to be in power and win, they go, well, what about Ivanka? When the answer is they're all scumbag.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to criticize each person instead of playing the political game of tribalism. So it does make you go crazy eventually.
Yeah, because then there's people out there, because I've definitely I've definitely had conversations with people where like they're a fan of this celebrity, just insert celebrity name here, and then they find out celebrity identifies with this political group, and then like they're genuinely disappointed. They're like, oh, right. I like that guy, or I liked her,
because they're sold something as a product, right? They're sold that celebrity. I mean, if you want to make the maximum amount of money in this business, you want to be likable, and the way you be likable is you be agreeable.
You have to be nonpartisan as hell,
of course. And you don't be mean and all those different things. And certain comedies make you laugh, but you don't know these people behind. It's like, I like Taylor Swift's music, but like also she's tried to sue her fans, and she went after her grade 5 guitar teacher because he put on his website that he taught her guitar.
Yeah, I mean,
this is who you're dealing with.
I'm in a very similar boat with J.K. Rowling.
Yes,
like I'm a Harry Potter fanatic. I really don't like J.K. Rowling. like,
right.
Well, I had issues
like hey man, it's the same thing.
Yeah. Real quick, I think we're going to take a quick pause here, just do a little ad roll, and we'll be right back. This episode is sponsored by Brotherhood MFG. Brotherhood MFG is a clothing brand centered around car culture with a fresh style. They've even given me a special discount code to give to you guys. So if you go to teespring.com/stores/brotherhoodmfg and use discount code Passtime in all caps, you'll get a 13% discount off the entire store. All right, and we're back.
We were chatting on the side.
Chatting a lot. I address that every time. I think this is like the third time I've also called myself out for it. I always mention that, like, we did shit in the ad break. Fuck you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
But one thing that we did talk about before I started recording is the fact that you had a you had a first podcast. You currently have a second podcast, Unmentionable. What's the difference between the two shows? What motivated you to start a brand new one? What made that jump?
Yeah. So the old show was called Shame on You. It was like purely gay podcast. Essentially me and my best friend, two gay guys in Toronto, like in our 20s, and we just we had a lot of stories, and we had a lot of people that we were a horse. That's like the way of putting it. And we had insane stories, and we had this like imperishable bond, and it was just like really special. And the premise of the show, why it was called Shame on You, is just like when you're a gay person, you always kind of have this like self-hatred that lingers, and that was your residual shame. And so the idea was like, how do we get rid of all the shame that we have still left over? And it was basically to be disinhibited sexually. And so we just got on the mic, and we just we pushed through every uncomfortable feeling in us, and it was like this weird catharsis where we just sort of interview people I had sex with, and the idea, and also like just talk about our lives, and we're just so open. But the idea behind it was just like to shine a light on things that normally people don't see. And also we had a massive straight audience because it was just comedy. I mean, comedy is that unifier.
Yeah. Plus, like, it is my understanding that there's a lot of like general truths. There's a lot of like, if you're within the gay community, there's a lot of things that that like this is just this is standard, like check that box if you're a part of that community. That's just completely unknown to the straight community.
Totally. And also, like, that's the interesting thing is, like, our show, it started with a huge percentage of it was straight people, comparative to other gay podcasts. I mean, they just were like, it was kind of like a circle jerk, right? Like, you're just kind of like, they didn't really go there, and there was just kind of like a bunch of people sitting around talking about Jennifer Aniston or RuPaul. And I mean, whatever. That's not my scene, but whatever. People like that stuff. But it was, for us, it was just like we wanted it to be so real and just like blow through those social norms. And yeah, we just laid bare our soul on it and went through my dad dying. We went through 2 breakups on the show. We had on people that we loved and like broke up with on the show. Then we really dove into like more responsible content. We had on this one guy who, like, he lost all his friends to AIDS,
Oh,
and he was like 63, and it was so, like, we were crying obviously in the episode and everything. We had another guy like that, and then we had on, like, meth's a huge problem in the gay community, so we had on a guy who was addicted to meth, and it was just a super super real show. It was just brutal and real. And
well,
then our
it was there to like shine a light on the gay community for maybe people who weren't as aware of the trouble involved in
yeah,
it, or the shame, I guess, as you said.
and build the empathy, like, that's what life's about, is like, you got to build empathy for people that you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was kind of the thing, and then it blew up. We sold out shows in New York. We sold it shows in Toronto, and then I always wanted to write a book, and so that's why I wrote Famous Anus. It was kind of like a continuation of the podcast. And then, our friendship kind of fell apart, and there was a lot of issues, and I also realized that I outgrew the show. Like, as much as it was a blast, it was just 100% gay all the time. Like, that was really all we were doing. And I'm a political junkie, and I like talking about the environment. And I also want to get more edgier with my comedy. And I just kind of felt like I was pigeonholed into that like crazy far left woke world
You were
where,
like
like,
slowly typecasting yourself.
yes, I was like, I just had to be woke and unfunny. I mean, the far left is unfunny people because they take themselves very seriously. And so I try to get away from that world. And then now Unmentionable is just sort of like a show where I can showcase my comedy. Like, I'll just talk about nonsense with my producer and just like make jokes and bits. But then also, the name is Unmentionable because I have people on that you would never hear from.
Oh, I know.
Porn
I just watched the episode with the Baldo.
Oh, yeah. Did you watch the interview portion?
A majority of it, yeah.
Yeah.
I was watching it just before we got on the call for this recording.
Yeah, see, that's my dream guest. It's just something that's just like a jaw dropper, and I can make a lot of jokes and whatever with it. And then, but we had on a girl who burps on OnlyFans for $9.99 a month,
Nine
pulling
ninety
in
nine.
thousands of dollars a month just burping.
Dude, it's because humans are disgusting.
Well, yeah,
It's just, we're animals, man.
and she said also the funniest part. I will always remember this. She said that that her friend's a farter on OnlyFans,
Oh my
and
god.
her friends complained that she said the burping community is a lot nicer because the fart community is very like demanding. And I love the idea of this like bespoke fart community that's very demanding about the kind of farts they want.
Farts now, please.
Yes, how they want, like, it's like how they want to see it. How they one guy wanted it delivered to him in Tupperware, like
What? Like that must be such a money hole. Like,
yes,
because all you can do, you just send them a Tupperware. You don't even have to do anything. You
dude, it
just
was
made
$500, $500. Like,
humans are
but listen, we
disgusting.
live in an economy. It's like people will do, it's money exchanging for different things,
Oh yeah,
right? And
everything's
so it's like,
franchisable.
yeah. And so I mean, it's not for me, but that's what like my show is. I literally will have on the most outrageous people. I know this one girl, like, it's not as crazy, but like she just deleted all her dating apps and she refused to use them ever again. She's like, I'd rather just be single. And I
Hmm.
just thought it was fascinating.
See,
So
that would probably be a very interesting episode for me. So like, you know, just because you and I just met each other, I've been with my fiance now for about almost 9 years.
wow.
So we started dating before like dating apps was a thing. So like
Oh,
that's like a beast I've never experienced. I I was around when it started, never got it myself. Like I know that when it first came out, like it was received very positively. I know there's a lot of stuff coming out now saying it can be very damaging.
for sure. I actually think it's more damaging than positive. I mean, it is, if you go on Tinder, it's the gamification of dating, which like at certain points it's a business. So they'll literally send you like FOMO notifications saying like this person likes you and like is basically is hot and is wanted, and you need to pay X amount of dollars to figure out who they are. Or like if
Oh
you press
wow.
this button, more people in your neighborhood, it is like if you pay $5, 3 times the amount of people in your neighborhood will find you. So they basically withhold the person instead of actually, it's not based on you finding love. It's based on you staying on the app, which is sick.
Yeah, because it kind of feels like paid promotion,
Right.
like on a dating app. It's like, hey, like if you give us, you know, cha-ching, we'll make more people see your face,
Yeah,
and
and
they get.
it's not real. It's like I will match with like 10 people on Tinder and like one will respond. And it's like it's not that they're not into me. They swiped right. But they just need that validation boost of like, "Oh yeah, I'm wanted. Another person wants me. A
That must be
good-looking person wants me."
like I wonder like if that's a psychological thing, like like particularly on Tinder, where like you see somebody you find attractive, you're not interested in them, but you swipe on them anyways just to see if you match, just so in your head you can be like, ah, attractive people want me.
Sure. I'm sure it happens all the time. And then also a percentage of those people aren't even real. I mean, I didn't realize how catfishing was so crazy. It's so popular. I have been on so many apps where people make me jump through hoops to identify myself because they are scared that I'm a catfish. It happens all the time.
Oh
And I'm
yeah,
like, a lot of people have turned.
a buddy of mine got catfished once on,
Oh.
I think it was on Tinder.
How bad was it?
He wouldn't really go into detail. He just kind of showed me her picture, and he was like, "She looked nothing like this. Like this was not the person that was there." And like he can be very brash. So like the story he told me was match with this girl on Tinder, talk, set up a date. I'll meet you at the movie theater. She didn't have a car. He did. They agreed that she would meet him at the movie theater. He would bring her home afterwards. And he says he remembers driving by the movie theater, only seeing like one girl outside that he deemed extremely non-attractive. He's a very superficial guy, unfortunately.
We
But
all are.
yeah,
We're not all very, but I mean, I don't think it's crazy to say how someone feels.
yeah. So like he said he genuinely pulled up, rolled down the window, like asked for her name, and the moment she said yes, he peeled out.
Oh, that's so traumatizing for both parties.
Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah. He still laughs about that story. Like,
I had a friend who see there's different gradations of it, right? Like I had a friend meet up with someone who they would define catfishing as you're 80 pounds more than your pictures. You're still the same person, but you're 80 pounds. And I do think there's something, it's like, of course we all want to pick good photos of ourselves and everything, but you can't, if the person then rejects you, it's like you presented to them an entirely different picture of who you were. And unfortunately they do get to decide if they're attracted to this person or the person they're meeting.
yeah, and like it goes into the whole social media spiral too. Like, would you rather promote, the best version of yourself or the most accurate version of what you look like right now?
Of course, yeah. Have you seen the Facetune where people like? I have a friend. I mean, I hope she doesn't listen to your podcast, but she is so crazy with the makeup. So contours her face. It's basically an entirely different person to the point where when it rains, you don't recognize her
Ooh,
because she's used the makeup tricks to just construct a new bone structure on her face, and then she throws down like a bunch of filters and like Facetune and stuff like that. And when I look at her Instagram, it is not even close to the same person. And I wonder if someone goes on a date with someone like that, like, is it a form of false advertising?
I think it depends on how much conversing happens between them before the meet in person. Like, I think there has to be like a level of like, well, regardless of what they look like, going through my chat history with them, I connected with this person. I'm interested in at least this person's personality. But
I know it is. I do sound harsh, but it's like it's also when the first thing is always the looks, like, and
oh
then
yeah, like
you look at a bar, you look across the thing at somebody, you don't think like, oh, God, I want to know their personality.
no, not at all. And
No.
like again, it might be because I've been with the same person for almost 9 years, but like you have to be physically attractive. As shallow as it sounds,
Yeah.
that it's a factor. You have to be.
Yeah.
It might be their personality that makes you stick around
Well, the
if things
personality
fall
can do
through.
both. I find the personality can either, and you've probably experienced this too, it can either amp them up or take them down.
Oh yeah, like I forget exactly. I was making fun of my niece the other day.
That's nice. Is she a child?
Yeah, but she's getting a little boy crazy,
Uh,
and she was talking about how there's no attractive boys in her school.
Oh wow.
And like I was just like, oh, like good to know you don't know any funny people.
Yeah. Or that she thinks she's the like hottest. I mean, good for her. It's actually probably better to have a child with good self-esteem than bad.
Just high standards. Like
Sure.
I think well, maybe not extremely high standards, but it's good to have standards.
You know, my profile says high standards, low expectations. That's what it says on Tinder. Because it's like really how I feel. Like I'm gonna look for what I need, but also at the same time, like I know what this app is and I know what it's there to achieve.
Yeah.
And I'm not like holding my breath.
Like, yeah, I don't know. Like the whole dating app scene. Like I know, like there used to be like Plenty of Fish. That was like a web browser though.
Yeah, I remember that.
But isn't there like a really aggressive dating app scene within the gay community?
Well, there's Grinder, which is basically where you turn on. I mean, when I explained this to straight people, like initially when it came out, it's basically an app where you can turn it on. Pretty much, I would say like of single gay men, I would say probably like 75% of single gay men have it. I actually don't have it right now because it's so psychotic. But you basically like turn it on and it finds all the closest gay people that want to fuck you, like within proximity. Not just fuck. Sometimes they just want to date. But for the most part, the proximity factor makes it very sexual.
Yeah.
And so essentially you go on and then you can see like it's crazy. Sometimes you'll literally move into a condo, you'll turn it on and it'll be like 12 feet.
Bloop, 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 bloop.
Yeah. And you just like, it's like that first day where you're kind of like getting your surroundings. But that's, yeah. And then also mental health issues are endemic among gay men. So, I mean, it's like, it's not helping, but it is a crazy world where you can just go in your kitchen. If you're horny, you literally just find your neighbor. Like my friend used to bang this guy in his building who was on the 26th floor and he was on the 4th and he found him on Grinder and he was just like, hey, you want to have sex? And he was like, yep. Elevator down. Finish,
elevator down. You're basically roommates at that point.
Yeah. My friend used to go down in a robe like it was a spa and just like flip flops. And so, but like, yeah, that's the world of the gay community where like it's so easy to find sex, but it's so hard to find love.
Well, I think, and this is going to sound so fucking cheesy, but like as an impressionable kid, like one thing I heard on an episode of Glee, I don't know if you've watched Glee, but there's a whole coming out arc for one of the characters.
I can't. I can't watch things.
Oh, like I used to be obsessed with it. I watched it to completion. I wasn't always happy with it, but I liked the show enough to finish it.
Right.
But there's a whole story arc with one of the gay characters, like dealing with like hookup culture and like having sex as a gay person and stuff like that, and like something that the dad said to him was like, you know, like essentially on the lines of like all men are pigs, and when you're gay, it's two men. So,
of course. But you know what, man? Like, it's interesting because like my book, like, and you're right, pigs. Like my book, Famous Anus, is like it's outrageous. Like, there's one chapter where I sleep with my boss. Like, I just sleep with my boss.
That's just unprofessional.
Well, it was like 2 weeks after he quit, but still. And then there's like just behavior in there that like if you read it as an outsider, it would feel so insane to you, but it's so normalized within the community. And obviously I was also a very broken person in my 20s. So self-destruction is hilarious and entertaining. But like so much of that book is also like me trying to look back at how broken I was of a person and like how rotted my soul was. And that in these times where I thought I was looking for sex, I was just looking for love. And the same with friends. And then you have those hookups, and I had lots of them, and you're like laying in bed and you just feel empty.
Yeah.
That's like, not cheesy.
We both said something cheesy. Like, yeah, like I understand. Like, I know I think that's a dilemma with every and any sexuality, but it does seem to be more prevalent within the gay community.
Yes, definitely. And also like we have really high rates of depression, really high rates of anxiety, really high rates of drug abuse. Mm-hmm. I mean, the gay male community specifically is riddled with a lot of problems of people who just never really end up like liking themselves. Really.
And like just because of where I grew up, because I grew up in a very small northern town in Ontario, like. And I know, like, for the majority of people that are in that situation, it has almost, well, not almost, it pretty well entirely does with their surroundings. They're surrounded by a culture of people who frown upon it. They're surrounded by a whole community that will shame them for it. Like, like I went to a Catholic school in a small northern town, and there were maybe 3 people in the entire school that were out of the closet.
But how old are you?
I'm 24.
So I'm 34, and when
Oh,
I went to high school, there was 0 people that were out of the closet in a more like liberal place. So at least that actually, when you telling me that, that actually like made me hopeful, because that's more people than when I was in high school.
okay. Because like my general takeaway of it was like I was a theater kid, so naturally I was friends with a lot of these gay people,
Of
and
course.
like one thing that they would always like razz me about would be like, I know the people who aren't in the closet, and I'm not going to tell you, but there's a lot of them, Fred. There's a lot of people in the closet that go to our school, and I'm not going to tell you who they are, but trust me, I know. And like at first it was like kind of funny, but afterwards I'm like fucking damn, like why aren't they?
Well, because they've received a message in some sense, whether it's from their family, whether it's from their sports teams, that like there's something wrong with who they are. And then they've just kind of complied with that. Man, this is the thing I always say to people. And like, we had a lot of people like with our show. It really like when we started getting press and stuff like that, we had a lot of people come out of the closet. We had a priest come out of the closet. We had a 28-year-old firefighter came out of the closet. We had a guy in the military come out of the closet, because we went so far that they were kind of inspired by, they would even like take an inch, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I always say this to people, and like it's just so important for people to understand, like especially like let's take gay men particularly. Like I always say to people, it's 2021. If it's so great, then how come I can name you tons of men in Toronto in their 40s, independent, self-sufficient, like successful guys that are not out? If
Yeah.
if if it's so good now, they can't even come out in their 40s. And so that just tells you how glacial social pace is.
Yeah. Like we definitely start seeing it more, but that probably has a lot to do with the fact that the internet's a thing, and there's, you know, you're anonymous online, so like there are probably a lot of people who are very proudly openly gay online, under an anonymous profile picture or account or something like that. So it's interesting when you look at the online presence of the gay community and then try to compare it to your real life, and there's a bit of a disparity there.
100%. Yeah. And it also is it depends on where you live geographically.
Mm-hmm.
There's different worlds, what class you're in, what job you're in. If you're, some dude on a construction site, you got to believe that it's going to be a lot harder for you than if you're some marketing company downtown Toronto.
Yeah.
Just it's different worlds. And so, listen, I was really lucky in the sense like my family was super cool. One of the stories that's in my second book that like I actually never ended up telling on my first podcast is that my dad was gay, and okay, my dad was
Was
growing
past
up.
tense?
Yeah, oh, he's dead now, but
Oh,
growing up, my dad was a penis doctor, urologist, right?
okay.
And this is kind of how I became a comedian. So my dad was a gay penis doctor. We thought he was straight at the time, but essentially, like when I did stand up, my opening joke was something along the lines, I don't even remember, it was something along the lines of making fun of it, and I was like, you gotta, because you gotta do what you love.
Well, of course you do. I think, like, to be completely honest, like, no one bats an eye at a straight gynecologist.
Of course, but like my dad's job was like he held 40 cocks a day. You find out he's gay, right? Like it's funny. So, anyways, that was kind of I found my dad on a website called squirt.org.
Oh
It
boy.
still exists. And I had to tell my mom, and I didn't have like I could have confronted him at the time, but like we had no relationship. So I just kind of told my mom, and that was the basis for their divorce.
Oof.
And so much of the work I did in like my old show and kind of my books and stuff like that is just kind of to live my life in a completely opposite way than my dad. My dad was secret. He took off from my family. He like put my mom through hell. And I was just like, God, I'm going to be like a super proud gay guy who just like goes completely all the way just so I can be the opposite of him. And some people go the same way as their parents. Some people go like the total opposite way.
That's the majority. Like, there are gray areas, but for the majority, you either become your parents or you become the opposite of your parents.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So That's the kind of the was the basis of that show and why I was so proud and it meant so much to me. And like obviously it's a funny story and like it gives me a lot of fodder for like my second book and stuff like that. But I tell people that story and they like it's like blows their mind that like I literally found his profile, like his dick pics.
Oh
Like
no.
yeah, and dude, I was so angry with my sister. I was telling her the story and I was like frantically like gasping. And then I kept going back to the fact that I was like, yeah, and he had like a huge dick. I'm like, why don't I have a huge dick? My sister's like, can you shut the fuck up about your dick right now? Like we got bigger problems.
Like, it's one thing hearing my brother talk about his dick, but hearing my
Yeah.
brother talk about his dick and my dad's dick.
And they have this whole club of big dicks and I'm not invited, blah blah. And there's just like all this shit on his profile about like his sexual proclivities and whatnot. And I was 23 and I was just it was emotionally quite scarring, I will say.
Yeah, I could only imagine.
It's pretty bad.
I mean, I don't know. Like, when couldn't you find, like, in, like, hindsight's 2020, but like probably could have found some camaraderie in there. You had something in common with your dad, something to talk to him with.
But he just took off. I mean, that's
Mm.
usually what happens is like, and this never really gets talked about. I really want to have a person on my podcast about this. Is like, there's millions of people, of kids in the United States that are born into these families, like millions of families where like one partner is gay and it's all like a front.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like people never they're like, oh, the person came out, yay, blah blah blah, but they never, not never, but usually don't talk about the carnage that's left behind. There are children left behind. There is a partner whose self-esteem has been destroyed,
Yeah,
and
because,
I
like,
like lived with that with my mom.
yeah, like, did I make him gay? Like,
Do my pussy stink?
oh, that's your mother.
Is that too much for the pastime? I mean, guys. By the way, if you listen to Unmentionable, like you've listened, it's raunchy. So just don't like message me and be like, I wasn't expecting this. I talk about eating pussy like every episode, and I've done it once. So it's just funny to me.
It's just funny. Well, what about it is
Like
funny?
it's funny because I read this story about, and this is how I know there's no God because I read this
Okay.
story about Michael J. Fox.
Oh no.
Not Michael J. Fox. Shit, Michael Douglas. Michael
Oh, okay.
Douglas got
Michael
eight.
J. Fox is such a better setup.
I know. Fuck. Michael. So, Michael Douglas got HPV. He ate his wife's pussy. She had HPV. She gave him. I could say pussy on your show, right? I guess.
Yeah. It's fine. We got the E for explicit.
Okay, perfect. So he ate her pussy, whatever. She had HPV. She gave him pussy. He got throat cancer.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and now I didn't know they could do this, but they can actually trace. So they can trace back the source. So they can say like, you got throat cancer from smoking, blah blah blah. And so they had basically traced the fact that like he gave her oral sex and went in his throat, whatever. And then obviously HPV turns to cancer a lot of the times, and blah blah blah. So then I did a whole bit on my show that like this is super dark, but like there are like girls, they date a guy, whatever, give him HPV, and then they break up, and then like years later, she's just like hearing that this guy has cancer. He's like 80 pounds, and she's just like, oh, bad luck. But like it's actually not. And how horrifying is that for men walking around that just performing oral sex on random women all over the world, and then cancer?
This is just a PSA about, like, avoiding, like, anonymous sex. Or
I mean, it's like, but it's invisible, right? And it's like if a girl doesn't have a pap smear or something like that, like people pass all the time. Sick world we live in that like, that can happen. And so that's like, it's just crazy to me that like this is a married couple.
yeah, that is, like, the scary part. The fact that they're, like, a committed relationship, married couple.
Expressing their love, and then a year later he's in chemo.
Yeah.
It's like, how can you believe in God? After I figured that all out, I was stoned, and I was just like, damn, that's like, I mean, I don't know how you can fully believe in God after that.
All the pieces are coming together.
And now she knows too, like the world knows that like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like not her fault, but it's like the world's like, oh, her toxic pussy. Like, there you go. And it's like, it's rough.
I've genuinely never heard that story. I didn't know that was a thing.
Oh yeah, look it up. I mean, it's happening right now, probably somewhere in the world.
Dude,
Some
like,
guy's getting it.
Dude, fuck COVID. Like, whenever I have, like, a slight cough now, I'm just gonna be like, that's just gonna be in the back of my head.
And you know what? But no, but you have your fiance, so you're good. It's not like you're jumping around.
No.
You're good. You're fine. But I mean, I'm just saying it like some guys, they push it too much, right? They go one too many, and then, oh no, should have married the girl before. Now you have cancer.
Oh.
It's dark, eh? It's dark, but it's not wrong.
No, it's interesting.
It is interesting, but it's like this is the world we live in now. And I had the Gardasil shot because you're supposed to get it for HPV strains, but now you need like 5 shots because it's like COVID. The variants just keep coming.
Yeah,
So you can only run so long, boys. It's coming for you.
can only run so long. Start getting married. Start locking shit down.
Or make the girls get pap smears. But then also you can pass it other ways. So
Oh yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, that was just like one really obscure, crazy example.
it's like that show, 1,000 Ways to Die.
I
Or
loved that show. That
but
show.
that's one of the ways.
That was one of my main sources of education as a kid.
Oh, that
1,000
shit
Ways to Die.
hard.
A beer belly could save you from a bullet wound.
Yeah. Or the people that's just like on the treadmill and just like some random thing happens and they're dead.
Yeah.
Ugh.
My favorite. I think I'm gonna close with this because I love this 1,000 Ways to Die story.
Sure.
Have you ever seen 1,000 Ways to Die? Like Way to Die, like #1?
Is this the most common? Is that why it's number one?
No, it's just the first entry in their list.
Oh, is it the tapeworm?
No, it was a married couple who both had like genuine crippling anxiety. They were married for years, never consummated the marriage. They were both virgins. They both had crippling anxiety when it came to sex. The first time that they decided to do it, they both died of heart attacks.
How old were they?
From the stress. They were a young couple, at least from what the show looked like.
Dude. That show, it's like, I mean, my sister's an ER nurse, so she tells me stories of things that come into the hospital and like things that they see, and like it is like there's people, that thing where people have sex and they get stuck together is like a real thing.
Oh God.
You come in with like a blanket around you and you literally have to walk up to like together, like up to the desk, and like the triage nurse, my sister has done that, is you're like, can I help you?
I can't even think of like any combination of people or sex positions that would make you stuck in someone.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know which one. I mean, it would be funny if it was like doggy or something, right? And then they have to go in that way. But like she said, a lot of the things, like this one she hasn't encountered herself, but she's heard from people that gerbling is real. So that's where people put the gerbil in the condom and then they tie it and they shove it up their ass, and then the gerbil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I listen to Slim Shady. I know what that is.
Yeah, it's good for your advertisers. And so that's like a real thing that your taxpayers go to, or tax dollar.
Yeah, helping people get gerbils out of their ass.
Yeah. Anyways, Unmentionable podcast every Friday.
Every Friday, Unmentionable podcast. Listen to this guy.
I sold myself. There you go.
Oh yeah. Anywhere else where people can find you before we do close up the show?
J Power Comedy is where I post clips from the show and I post random jokes on there. If you want to read my book, Famous Anus, honestly, even if you're not a gay person, it's just like a very ridiculous, funny book. If you want to like get stoned and read it, there's like a chapter in there where I get asshole surgery because my asshole breaks.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I did have anal fissure surgery. So it's like me documenting my life in the hospital for 5 days. So there's just like funny. I do acid in the book. Like there's just crazy things. So, like honestly, if you just want a book to like get you out of the quarantine funk, again, I'm not trying to sell it. Like it truly is a funny book. If you just want to just like get stoned and read something, then like I would recommend check it out for that reason.
Oh yeah, I'll leave links for all that in the comment or in the description.
Awesome, wicked. Thanks for having me on, man. This has been really fun.
Yeah, no problem. It was great having you, and thank you to everyone for listening. And bye bye.